What's up, people? Back with another reaction, back with some more Pet Shop Boys as we continue through the bonus material in this expanded folder for the 1996 album Bilingual. Thank you as always to Seb. And the next tune is another B-side from the Say Vida A single, and it's amusingly titled How I Learned to Hate Rock and Roll. I mean, it's hilarious. I do suspect there is some tongue-in-cheek, sarcastic, or otherwise more complicated than it looks on the page sentiment at play here, and it's all the more amusing to me because, 3 tracks ago, we listened to The Truck Driver and His Mate, which, as Mark notably pointed out, is essentially the Pet Shop Boys doing a rock track. So it also makes me think of the I Love Rock and Roll, is it Joan Jett? I'm trying to remember who that is, but yes, it feels like this is on the other end of the spectrum, though perhaps, again, with some witty complexity that is not explicitly in the title. So let's see what I can pick up on a first listen. This is the Pet Shop Boys, How I Learned to Hate Rock and Roll, a B-side from the Say Vida A single. The tension. fading, right? Very slowly. Which, I've said before, I'll take a more gradual fade if there has to be a fade out. I think it's something more serious at play here, given, or in contrast to what I said in the intro. So the first verse, I'm thinking, oh, this is surely topical. There must have been some song that criticized or sought to diminish or ridicule some other genre. And because it's like Neil's saying, you know, when I forget exactly what the phrasing was, but essentially like when something comes and marginalizes or shoots down everything, it was like inclusively including me. So like, you know, when it basically takes an entire genre or an entire scene or an entire demographic and attacks them, then it's not only unfair and with no nuance or even, you know, it's sort of broadly cruel, then he seemingly reacts strongly against it. Now, of course, there's a bit of a tension there because he's saying, like, you know, this is how I learned to hate rock and roll. But I wondered if there was, again, in the mid-90s, some song that was, you know, dismissive of dance music or in some way painted with too broad of a brush, excuse me, and thus is sort of incurring the wrath of Neil and the Pet Shop Boys here. But yeah, it felt less like sarcastic or tongue-in-cheek, like, oh, you know, we do use guitars and whatever, but we're making a joke about hating rock and roll. It felt much more serious than that. So I don't quite know what's happening, and even if it is something along the lines that I just elucidated, I don't have the specific reference point, but yeah, it really made me wonder. Now, as the song went along, it seemed to be saying, like, everyone's trying to conform. Everyone's just trying to go for the same formula and reinforce the status quo, which here in the US I think we'd say status, but ultimately I give preeminence to English pronunciation because of course it is where the language comes from. But yeah, so it sounds like it's suddenly a critique of the maybe way that by the mid-90s rock had become more about, at least in the perception of Neil, and I'm guessing Neil wrote the song, although the Sonics did feel a bit crisp. You know, they're very dance music, very, you know, electronic, and I enjoy the sort of cycling, beeping kind of synth line, and then there was a more like melodic run on top of that, and then there was this like swishing sort of percussion, but you know, kind of rhythmic element. All of that worked really well, and it did have a like dance sound. Maybe not the most underground dance of their tunes, but definitely like very dance floor, which feels appropriate if you're making a track that is critiquing rock and roll. But yeah, so as the track played on, it almost felt like it was maybe less about a specific egregious judgmental tune that came from the world of rock and, you know, sought to call out an entire body of people that Neil was part of, and more about like, oh, rock's lost the vitality. It's not as rebellious or, you know, counterculture as it once was, and now it's about, you know, a corporate formula and, you know, making money for big labels and not really rocking the boat and just, again, reinforcing the status quo. So yeah, I don't. Maybe it's both. You know, it could be both of those things. It could be neither of those things. But those are the ideas that came across to me. And yes, ultimately, I do enjoy like Neil's vocals. They were not like they weren't whispered or anything, but they were a bit lower key, and they had a bit of intensity to them, even though they weren't, you know, big and sweeping. Not that a lot of his vocals are big. Oftentimes, he kind of has this melodic turn. I do remember. That's my impression. That one, I always remember the end of that track. He kind of gets way more powerful in his delivery than I remember in most other tunes. Nevertheless, the point is, I'm very keen and curious about what the lyrical themes are here, and as I said, I enjoy the electronic dance floor stylings of the tune. So yeah, do let me know what you think, and I will see you next week for the next one. Peace.